Welcome to THA Talks, for free thought and open minds. Hello, I'm Paul Obitelli and this is edition 103 of THA Talks, the alternative podcast show from the UK, putting out weekly shows that are available across the globe. If you'd like to check out our full archive, just go to www.thatalks.com to listen to or to download all our free content. Our talks include news, conspiracies, spirituality, the occult, science, history, art, philosophy, religion, and much more. For anyone who'd like to contact us and give us some feedback or maybe recommend a guest for the show, you can email us at info@thatalks.com, or you can go to our website and contact us via the contact tab there. And don't forget, you can subscribe to the show via our RSS feed, or you can also find us on iTunes and Stitcher and many other podcast directories out there. Well, thank you for tuning in again, ladies and gentlemen. Always good to be back here on THA Talks. I've still got that cough going on because it hasn't been long since our last show we done, so I apologise again if I sound a little bit mongish and a bit kind of fed up. It's just in my voice. Trust me, I'm glad to be here, but it hasn't quite cleared up yet. So hopefully that's not too much of a problem for you, but as usual, the show must go on. Also, I hope you enjoyed our last show with Karen Lanson and hope you picked up some tips there, as we all should. Health is very important. And we'll be looking forward to getting Karen back on the show again, because that's the kind of subjects that you can never get too bored with that one. There's always new things going on and new discoveries. So we'll be happy to have her back on. And we've got today we've got another fascinating guest on today. But before we go there, I think it's high time that we went across the other side of London for a surge and a dramaturge. And a person who his name is called David Parry.
The word is about there's something evolving. Whatever may come, the world keeps revolving. They say the next big thing is here, and that the revolution's near. But to me it seems quite clear that it's all just a little bit of history repeating itself. Good evening, Mr. Obitelli. How are you?
I'm very well, Mr. Parry, and how are you?
I think I'm over the cough. I'm bound to start coughing now.
I wish I was.
I'm nearly over. I know, you still got it, you poor thing.
Yeah. It was very much inflicted by standing in the freezing cold for about 2.5 hours thinking, oh my God, I need to get warmer.
Oh no, stop. So I can't take... I mean, now the winter's arrived with a vengeance. I'm just hovering over radiators and hoping for the best.
It was one of them ones when you just know that this is going to give me a cough without a shadow of a doubt, and it didn't disappoint.
Oh, propeller heads, Shirley Bassey, and the inevitability of the British winter.
Well, we've got more Illuminati business going on at the moment.
Oh...
Well, we've had previously on the show, we had Joseph Wages, which basically he was having a bit of a sort of a very diplomatic, thorough research into some of the documents he's found on the Illuminati and his perception on who they were. Today, we've got someone who's very well known on the internet and out there among all this research for coming out as a whistleblower and actually claimed to have documentation that he was a member of the Illuminati. I think I'm getting all this right. I mean, there was a lot of interviews and work he done at the time, and we've got him on the show now to talk about it and to have his perspective on how real the Illuminati were, who they are, and just to have his take as a whistleblower. Because as I understand it as well, he's actually got documentation to prove he's been a member of some of these groups as well, hasn't he, David?
Well, Paul, I confess I'm rather conflicted with this one. He's a friend of ours, Jonathan Bolter, independent businessman and raconteur. As far as I know, Leo actually claims he's still in the Illuminati and he's stopped whistleblowing. Oh God, I mean, I'm down to earth with all this stuff, I suppose. And I thought Joseph really summed up what the documents were saying. I mean, there were a group of scholars who had infiltrated the Freemasons. They didn't do too well. And then it all sort of fizzled out. But I mean, I know you don't really agree with me on that. So,
well, no, it's not so much agree. I just think, and I certainly don't disagree with Joseph's research, because it was very, very in depth and very clear. And I think he's got a very good book on it. But I think it's more. The question is are they still around? Did they exist secretly underground? And that's something we can discuss and all have our opinion of. I mean, I think the thing is with Joseph's work is it pretty much implies that Freemasonry was the continuation of the Illuminati, if you like. That's kind of how you could sum it up, I guess, the closest thing. In that regard, there's a lot of Freemason lodges, so it's an interesting one. Definitely worth the research, I think.
Well, I admit I don't have any hang-ups over Freemasonry. I think they do a lot more good than harm. And as far as I remember, Leo actually does have the certificates to prove he's an Illuminatus. It's just I don't know what to make of it. I mean, the only thing is to get him on the show, as I say, get him talking, and let's see what he says.
Let's do it.
Let's go.
Hello, Leo. Welcome to THA Talks.
Thank you for having me on. It's great to speak to the English audience, as I'm half English myself, at least half British, as I'm also partly Scottish. But I would guess that I've been also in London a long time. My mother is from London, so I lived there 10 years, and I feel very close to you. And it's a pleasure to be back in London, even if in a virtual way, not a physical way yet.
Well, I mean, Europe seems to be getting smaller and smaller. Nowadays, you know, we're kind of becoming Europeans. I suppose that's kind of like a controversial thing to say nowadays, but it's this show is going to be controversial because we're obviously going to discuss the Illuminati. Now, we've had a guest on the show before, an author called Joseph Wages, who's a Freemason, and he wrote a book about he wrote a book about the Illuminati.
He's a friend, it's a good friend, and I like his work very much. It's very academic. It's basically based on historical facts, though, of course, are quite old, so they're nothing contemporary, but if you want to have a good prospect of things, you should always go into the study of these things from the start, so you get a general picture of, and also he is really pointing out the facts and not any speculations. So you are really going into the insight that was never given before into the rituals of the Illuminati. So definitely thumbs up for Joseph's work.
Okay, so as a whistleblower, am I right in saying you claim that you are actually in the Illuminati now?
Yes, but it's different because he's talking about the Illuminati 2 centuries ago when they were created by Adam Weishaupt, which is also only one branch of the Illuminati.
Okay.
Because the Illuminati are divided into various sects, as even Joseph knows very well. We talked about it also in radio shows together. My prospect is to not define only Illuminati as Adam Weishaupt's Illuminati, but like people like Stanislao de Goita did, which was a very known initiate, extend this to a whole series of sects which existed even before Illuminism, and some also mystery schools that, of course, predate Christianity and go right up to Atlantis. So, but please go on with the question so I can.
No, yeah, it's great. I mean, that's basically what I wanted to touch on is have your views on what you thought of his work and stuff. I mean, you sound very, very complimentary towards his work.
It's nothing to do with, you see, if you ask Joseph what's going on now in this scenario, which we define as the Illuminati, well, of course, then he tends to have a very regular approach, which is to basically count these degrees as a mystery school that can be added on the degrees of Freemasonry and maybe make it into again into an order which had some positive aspects in the teachings. Of course, I am a bit opposing the figure of Weishaupt, which I think is manipulatory in the end, And I don't have such a positive view of what the Illuminati then transformed themselves in, because if you read actually the instructions of the degrees of the Illuminati, you study them, you see the whole manipulation scheme that was pervading the whole system. For the first time, really, we can say that a secret society is creating secret cells in a way to establish, infiltrate, politically, infiltrate other Masonic orders, because it wasn't really a Masonic order, it was an Illuministic order. It was an order that was created by Weishaupt in a context which was the University of Ingolstadt, which was a Jesuit context. And in fact, I think 4 years or 5 years, maybe 4 or 5, 6 years, approximately 5 years, I think, into the creation of the Illuminati, the actual University of Ingolstadt, I think around 1780, got closed down, definitely. I mean, it never been reopened again in the same way, because the Jesuits were at that time persecuted by the Catholic Church. They were banned. So in a way, it was a very specific period of history where certain strange things happened, like, for example, the Jesuit Catholic, who was not more welcoming to the Vatican, but became again welcoming to the Vatican after the death of Napoleon, so in 1815. Before that, had to mingle sometimes into the lodges of Freemasonry or in the ones of the Illuminati. And it's very interesting what Joseph Wages has taken out with his research. This figure, the Abate Marotti, who was a Jesuit, who then became later on secretary to a pope, and he apparently, and this is confirmed by Joseph also in his research, wrote the Masonic rituals within the Illuminati system of Adam Weishaupt. So helping actually constituting the actual rite of what is the order of the Illuminati of Adam Weishaupt is the Jesuits. And this is not a speculation anymore, but is a confirmation. Even Joseph, though, couldn't manage to get certain information regarding Marotti, because, of course, they are preserved in secret in the Vatican and also in the Jesuit headquarters in Borgo Santo Spirito. And I think, though, it's very interesting that finally we start to clear up to the people what is true and what is not. There is evil Illuminati. The Illuminati in the instructions left one particular instruction where they say, when they will persecute us, we will simply transform ourselves many different names. Okay, that means that from calling yourself Order of the Illuminati, at that point, you have many different other secret society which were part of the Illuminati network, which already pre-existed even Weishaupt's order, which of course was constituted by a pre-existing order, which was the right of strict observance of Freemasonry, which was banned definitely, was closed down in 1782. And this specific order, of course, very close to the house, the Stuart House, and so, of course, very close to the Jacobites, and very anti-Hanoverian, was important. And since then, it's never been practiced again, but it filtered in two different rites of Freemasonry. One is the rectified Scottish Rite, the other one, the Swedish Rite, which basically are rites that are different from the rest of the Masonic rites because they are only for Christians. There is so this really strong Christian legacy in Freemasonry that though starts to get destroyed, mined after 1813 when the Duke of Sussex opened really Freemasonry to the non-Christian world in a way. We see that gradually things get worse and worse, and then at one point the Grand Orient of France in the 1870s decides to eliminate from you have the volume of the Sacred Law, which is an essential part of a Masonic lodge, and it's usually a Bible, or if you are in a Muslim country, a Quran, or maybe different ones like also at the same time. But it's important to have a volume of the Sacred Law that represents the great architect of the universe. Now this concept gets put into question by the French. And this creates a big problem that since then has been really a problem for not only for the Masonic world, that will have been, just limited to the world of the lodges or the intellectual speculations of the lodges, but actually it created outside some real monsters like communism. Communism was created because then people like Trotsky, Lenin, and so on got initiated in France in this atheistic form of Freemasonry, which lost the recognition of the United Lodge of England, which of course condemned the Grand Orient of France. But all this was manipulated behind the scenes by certain characters, and of course they had their own interest in doing these manipulations. And so everything has been always crafted in history by invisible masters and secret chiefs. So this is, which are part of these ancient mystery schools, these ancient traditions. They represent also a reality which sometimes transcends into something which is not only physical, but metaphysical. So made of a reality which is not visible and at times not yet proven scientifically, though we are trying with the work of some researchers that have a very good knowledge of quantum physics to break certain, codes knowledge, go back into the ancient one, compare it to the new discoveries of quantum physics, demonstrate that actually these so-called entities or existence that is not proven to the scientific community now is actually the product simply of a reality that we not yet grasp in the fullest, but thanks to quantum physics we are now able, I think, to give those explanations that will put into contact the world of esoteric with the world of science, and then remarry them again, because this fracture brought, as you know, alchemy to become on one part a spiritual endeavor, on the other chemistry, breaking really, into something that was instead unified. Science was unified with religion in the sense that it was always there, proving the existence of God. This is also because of what has happened with this Masonic declaration of the Grand Orient of France, that in turn gradually led to more liberal and so-called humanistic ways, approaches. There is a whole humanist society in the world that thrives, which actually is bringing the world to atheism and yet more materialism. So I position myself as a traditionalist in all this, and try to give my explanation to a world which I see less and less concerned with these subjects, but because of that, they are more and more also led to do mistakes and possibly fail in their endeavors.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that all sounds very interesting. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, if we look at the world today, I mean, we see feminism being more and more empowered in the political world. We're seeing nationalism be disregarded a lot in certain parts of the world. And as you've just mentioned, like liberalism is sometimes seeming like it can turn itself inside out. I mean, this is coming from at least my perspective. Now, these traits are very similar to what the Illuminati are believed to have kind of started back in the times when they wanted, the women's liberation, women's voting. They were against the church, and it just reflects very similar to what's very prominent and powerful today. Do you think that is the fault, that we are experiencing the Illuminati in that regard, or is it a different force that's doing that?
I would say that's one of the points that the fears maybe Wages has more of a, if you notice, an apologetic stand to this materialistic and then position of Bishop that indulges in what is also becoming later on communism. But I think that Bishop, yes, he was called Spartacus. Yes, his legacy might have been definitely used in Germany for the development of the communist concept. And of course, this communist concept led to the tragedy of communism worldwide, that still we are living in some countries, because we are now in front of a new enemy, really, which is called Islamo-communism. So communism is a way for the intellectuals of Europe to justify the Islamic invasion. There is, in the last 15 years a growing number of left-wing intellectuals that simply whatever Islam does, they just go for it and just seem to justify even the most brutal scenarios without taking into account that a nation like Japan, who decides willingly, like Donald Trump wants to do, to not let the Muslims in, is actually the safest nation in the world, because Japan doesn't have any Muslim terrorist attacks. So this means that, I mean, of course, I understand there is millions of Muslims living even in Great Britain today. So what are we going to do? I think that it was very good that Freemasonry, the United Lodge of England in particular, with certain lodges, managed to deactivate the brutal acts that were starting to take place in some Islamic communities. Years ago, I remember in some parts like Brighton, if I remember well, there was also Manchester, some accidents. But I mean, Islam is very strong in Great Britain. So what are we going to do now? I mean, you can't really put them in concentration camps because they're part of our society. So if we have to live together, then we have to learn how to respect together. And I think, unfortunately, that the Islamic creed doesn't have the grade of acceptance to live peacefully amongst the Westerners and to be, if not, undomesticated. So in this case, the Masonic Lodge once did a good thing. It's not lobbying, it's not conspiring to take over a bank, it's actually conspiring to do what? To put religious leaders together in the same lodge, if they are from the Hindu community, the Muslim community, the Catholic, the Protestant. This is the greatness, I think, that still nowadays could help Freemasonry be still useful for the community. But unfortunately, when it comes to interreligious dialogue, we always seem to hear the same thing at the end of the dialogue. One religion wanted to prevail over the other. Instead, by putting them in a very regimented, regulated place like a lodge, the good thing is that actually they have to respect the rules. And so those rules are the same for everybody. Doesn't matter if you are Muslim, Christian, Buddhist, or whatever. And so for me, the problem now is atheist Freemasonry, is that liberal Freemasonry, that the Illuminati, unfortunately, that gradually went into atheism, gradually created things like communism. Well, we have to rediscuss the whole of our society and give ourselves some new priorities here. If we want to preserve the last remains of our Western civilization, we have to absolutely rediscuss also this liberal communistic approach, which has also been not only then developed later on by the Zionists, but also by the Jesuits even earlier on, and then later on with the Zionists. So Jesuits that are now in charge of the Vatican with Pope Francis. This morning, Pope Francis, today is Sunday, at least when we are now transmitting from here, from Rome, and Pope said that will be the year of the Jubilee of the immigrants. I mean, I thought it was the Jubilee of something else. Now is the Jubilee of the immigrants. This is, of course, very controversial subjects because we don't want to be dubbed as racist. We don't want to be dubbed as Nazis. We don't want to be dubbed as anything that can. I think that personally myself, fascism, Nazi, communism are paradigms of the reality which is basically finished with the end of the first Cold War. The second Cold War will be fought on completely different ideologies. And I think that even if, of course, they are trying their best to rehash all these old ideologies, they're old and they're not suitable for a civilization which, of course, is going somewhere else. But this civilization can't then become the new world order of a democratic synarchy without any spiritual hierarchy within, because a good synarchy should have a spiritual enlightened hierarchy on top. Here we have simply a bunch of bureaucrats, very cold-blooded, that are leading Europe astray from Brussels. And England and Scotland, and of course, Great Britain in general, is independent from what's going on in the mainland. And this is very good for you because you have the British pound. You are not connected in any way to the sovereignty loss that Italy and other countries in Europe had to endeavor once they joined the euro. Having to accept a loss of sovereignty, meaning that you have lost your nation. If you don't print the money of your nation, you are not the owner of your nation anymore. And in Italy, we don't print our money. It's printed in Frankfurt. Spain doesn't print their money. It's printed in Frankfurt. Greece doesn't print their money. So these countries have basically lost sovereignty. Now, who is Angela Merkel? Angela Merkel is an ex-Stasi head of the secret police, the fierce, evil, atheistic, terrible secret police that ruled the Eastern Germany, and one of the most cruel dictatorships, of course, at that time supported by the Soviet Union. So she has implemented her Stasi model on modern Germany, unified Germany, and by implementing it now, Germany is intellectually castrated. So Germany being intellectually castrated, it's very easy then for them an operation like the one or other cities where you rape the women with the Muslims. At that point, in the Carter, you print Mein Kampf. I understand that it's a great joy for us. I myself, I like very much these books. I'm a right-wing man, but it doesn't mean that I can endorse in 2016 this kind of behavior supported by a Kalergi plan, which was made, as you know, almost 100 years ago by people in the aristocracy, especially Count Codon Kalergi, himself half Japanese and wasn't, of course, a pure-blooded aristocrat, so he wanted the rest of Europe to become mixed race. Now, what does it mean? Now, of course, today, in 2016, saying something like this, immediately the left-wingers, the classic, what we call in Italy, the radical chic, the catto-communists, the ones that are a bit communist, a bit Christian, and they love it all together because they just like relativism. Well, these people, they want to take a hard stand and our traditions. They want to give in to globalism. And globalism is slowly destroying this planet. The New World Order is globalism. The Illuminati as a network on top, this evil part of the Illuminati, this part that simply works on matter and not on the spirit, is not the real Illuminati, for at least for my order, the Ordo Illuminatorum Universalis. Why? Because, as you know, the first people to be called Illuminati were actually the Christians. When they were baptized to Jesus, they were given the name Illuminati. I'm not saying that you can't believe in any other religion. I simply think that in this part of the world here, we have had a certain history, of course, different in certain parts of North Europe, where you have also strong religion. And I understand also that by castrating the Norsk folk, especially the Norwegian, the Swedish, because the Icelanders actually faked their conversion, which led them to a different kind of approach. But the ones who were actually converted in the way, I cut your head or you become Christian, well, these people here, they basically castrated their Viking identity. And they became mama's boys. It became basically a land of social democrats where the women have extremely powerful, they're very powerful, they have feminist organizations that rule the whole of North Europe. I'm talking about Scandinavia, Germany.
Oh, yeah.
I'm talking about Denmark, I'm talking about... These nations are models of social democracy. What does it mean, social democracy? It means, in my eyes, that you have very high level of suicides, a very high level of cover-ups in the scandals, because they don't want to bring out the scandals that in reality will prove that this whole social democratic illusion is not working. And they live in hypocrisy. They live in profound hypocrisy. And this is not my Europe. This is not the Europe that we want in any way. I don't accept it. And so for this reason, I came out of 10 years ago, this is 10 years, out of a group of people that I didn't identify anymore with, because their new world order resembled not the kingdom of God, but the kingdom of the Antichrist, of Satan, of matter, of corruption and greed. And I didn't want to have anything to do with this kind of people. That's why I went out. I, of course, how you say in English, stuff many people in the process. I'm very glad I did, because it makes them a little bit move, like you give them a shock, because some of these people in their chairs of power or in their initiatic position thought they were untouchable or unrecognizable and invisible, and instead I made them visible. And so bringing out these occult governments from the closet, showing to the people gradually what's really going on, has been my work in the last years with a number of publications in the English language. Now, finally, we have at least 2 publications, which is Pope Francis the Last Pope and also Volume 1 of my Confession Volume 1, thanks to CCC Publishing in San Francisco, which is a great opportunity. There was no editors in Europe in the English language that had the courage to do so. I'm sorry to say, in England there was nobody. And we had to go all the way to California to really find in that place, in magical place, which is Berkeley, which is San Francisco, is a place where culture seems to strive, to actually, they seem to lead the culture of the modern world, because you are living on it. You are living it by touching your computers, by living the internet, by doing everything that is, of course, going from Silicon Valley right up to your desktop. So I wanted to be at the heart of all this revolution, fighting the enemy there where the Church of Satan made their first moves, where Alistair and his disciples in Berkeley created the Grand Lodge of the OTO in 1977, where what is pagan decadence. Why? I mean, of course, I think it's pagan decadence, because paganism has to be only practiced by those tribes and those bloodlines linked to those gods. It's a rule. If you do it outside of your DNA spectrum, it's not worth the fuss. It is a concept very complicated. Of course, it will need a whole transmission only to go into that. But I can assure you that we have to stick to the religions that are given to us in a specified territory, because religions are simply a language from these mystery schools that transmits us these truths. Of course, once we manipulate them with geopolitics, we make them into political tools, they are not anymore religions, they are something else. And unfortunately, these days, they seem to be just a tool for implementing their plan of global control and manipulation. So if one day they need the Shiites to do one thing, boom, they do one thing, sign a paper, everybody smile. Then if the Sunni Wahhabis need to explode another thing, or they donate or do another thing, they do it. Or if the Muslim or the Jewish Orthodox need to go to in Jerusalem, make a bit of chaos, they trigger those guys too. It's becoming a game of intelligence services of the New World Order and the Illuminati to manipulate these religious bigots and idiots into the end of times catastrophe. So this is what they're doing.
Okay, well that's really interesting stuff. David, I can sense you're itching to jump in here.
Gosh, I mean, firstly, I need to confess I don't always share Paul's political outlooks. And I've been looking forward to this, Leo, for ages. I saw you on Project Camelot a year or so ago, and you've got to clarify one thing for me, I suppose. Are you a whistleblower, or are you still an Illuminatus? Where do you stand with it all nowadays?
Yeah, when that interview with the Project Camelot was done, at the time I had broken from the Montecarlo Lodge between 2006 and 2008, and I was basically not in any lodge, in any order, apart from my own order, which I had co-founded in Montecarlo a few years earlier. And then in 2008, so after that interview that you saw with Project Camelot was made, things changed when I suddenly decided, I saw that 2 years on the internet didn't really guarantee my safety. And the only way I could do it was to go to Monte Carlo. And actually, we did a convent, which was reported in Volume 1 and other books I made, and also on the internet. This meeting in Nice of very powerful individuals, where I managed to bring back my order, take it as I was the Grand Master of an order created in a lodge, which was the Montecarlo Lodge of the MEC, of the Masonic Executive Committee, no longer existing. Basically, at that time I was fighting, but I wanted to still keep my own order, co-founded, and I was really eager to keep. So I brought it back to Italy with a bunch of loyal support. I managed, because, see, this order was created by 3 individuals. As 2 of them, I don't want to nominate the other one, but basically 2 of them fought against a third one, and we won because we were 2 against 1. It was me and a Frenchman against this Italian guy who was Ezio Giunchiglia from the Montecarlo P2 Lodge. And so I got the Ordo illuminatorum Universalis back in Italy. Now, since then, things have really changed, because I have, as a Grand Master, got more and more people on my side thanks to my revelations, my books, and so on. And so I'm not only anymore one little whistleblower trying to survive the whole scheme of things. Difficult, I tell you. Between 2006 and 2008, I suffered persecution, arrest for espionage, torture, whatever, you mention it. So these things have actually been, witnessed. They've been written in newspapers. I was arrested for espionage in Norway. Things were really dramatic. And so my life was there. Really, I was risking to get killed. Things changed very much in 2009 when I went to Japan. I got involved in a whole operation also there with Benjamin Fulford, with Neil Keane. And then, of course, things didn't went right, but it was very important because we had to recover these billions that were confiscated in Chiasso with these Japanese. And it all ended up, of course, after in the alternative media and also some in the mainstream media. But in any case, my position now is as Grand Master. In 10 years of me opening up to the outside world, saying my order is not anymore supporting the New World Order. We are independent. We got out of Monte Carlo. In Nice, we established our independence from any other group, and we went back to Italy. And with this bunch of people, I can tell you, finally took back everything that used to be mine, also initiatically speaking, because at this point, Licio Gelli, who was the worshipper master of the P2, who died not so long ago, he actually left this Masonic spiritual testament, and he left a lodge in my hands, and he left basically a position because everything I criticized, including his own mistakes, were accepted by him, because in the end, in Christianity, we accept your, if you ask for forgiveness, I forgive you. And then after 10 years, basically, I got back everything that was taken to me that day in Monte Carlo and then in Sanremo in 2006, when I got into a clash with people like Giorgio Ugo Balestrieri, and then also another guy called Rui Alexander Gabiro. All these people got arrested later on. They got involved in scandals. Giorgio Ugo Balestrieri, who was the president of a Rotary Club in New York, is actually at house arrest in Italy at the moment. Everything I did because I was fighting crime. I don't care about anything else, but I care about legality. My motto is legality, legality, legality. So in this context of legality, I work for the acceptance of changes within these systems that, of course, are infiltrated by Satanists, by lobbyists, by people who have nothing to do with the ancient mystery schools, and most of them want to actually use black magic and the black arts to bend down people, to manipulate people, no soul, with no character. I oppose all this. Maybe we are the last of the idealists in my order, but I can tell you, yes, now many more Masons, knights from various Templar orders have joined my order, and now the war against the New World Order and their own Masonry, their own corrupt form of Masonry, because even the United Lodge of England acted in the wrong way in the end with my persona. And there is people that we both know that will tell you this. I mean, the English United Lodge of England had the courage of kicking me out of Kirby Lodge 2818 because I opposed this Satanist OTO, which I was actually infiltrating on behalf of John Hamill, who is still the director of communications of the United Lodge of England. I used to work for him, infiltrating the Satanists, and also on behalf of Robert Gilbert, who used to be worship master of Quote Coronati. I made this work for the English intelligence of infiltrating the Satanists. I was paid back with being kicked out of my own lodge. You understand this? So this is a personal matter here. When I agreed to then to the regular Grand of England with this schism that was the first of a kind in the history of English Freemasonry 10 years ago, it was maybe idealistic, maybe it was a bit crazy, but we got, in any case, the Marquis of Northampton at the time to come out in open lodge condemn us, because at that time we even ushered in the Grand Lodge de France and the whole Jacobite thing against my enemies. I mean, I see this as an internal confrontation. And at the moment, the enemy is still very strong because, of course, they have the resources, there is, of course, a whole bunch of institutions which are corrupt in this day and age. With this Church of Rome, Catholic Church is completely corrupted. We have the institutions that are all corrupted. Freemasonry is corrupted. So we try to be the ones who bring a bit of light, a bit of hope to the people by showing them really what's going on, and at the same time fighting this battle with honesty and dignity. This is what we try to do.
Leo, you're a fascinating man, and you've got to promise to come back on the show at some point. Let me tell you, I need to confess something, I suppose. Last year, I had the honor of being consecrated as a Valentinian Gnostic bishop in Italy. I've been dialoguing with them for many years, and I need
which lineage was this?
Valentinius.
Yes, but from which? Who is representing them in Italy?
I'm not at liberty to say that on air, but I will tell you. I will tell you.
Okay.
Say to you. Leo, you've got to clarify something for me. I know what the great name is of the great architect, and I know it's not what the enemies of Freemasonry say. So I know they're not bowing down before evil if they're good men and in a sound lodge. But one thing that confuses me, certainly if you're using, I can see where some of the rumors are coming from, I think. If you're using a phrase like great architect, surely that's the demiurge. And the demiurge, of course, is not God, not really. What's your own...
Well, I understand your concept here is that because, of course, you are agnostic, so, of course, everything that is matter is in reality already a corruption of the original spirit. So, of course, the demiurge, in a way, it's the creator now of this materialistic surrounding. We, as an order, work for the archons in a way that we supervise, we judge in our invisible colleges in a way that we try to bring order where there is chaos, and especially when it comes down to Gnostic successions, as you know, the situation there is very confused because some Gnostic successions have been infiltrated indeed by Satanists, by Crowleyanity, like even the Catholic Church has been infiltrated by Crowleyanity, but especially the Gnostic churches, which came out of Doniel or other lineages connected to the Antiochian. And I think that it's very important to understand also the whole, because I personally was for many years involved with the Church of Stephen Heller in Norway. And then but it was actually not because I liked Stephen Heller, which I actually don't like very much, but because I liked Jan Sater, who was his local priest. Then I saw, though, that Stephen Heller had a kind of approach which I disliked, which was to keep the role of bishop only for himself. In a way, he was trying to paternalize a guy like Jan Sader, who actually I think of as a great person who should have deserved for his work to become bishop for a long time. And so I dislike the whole thing. But the history behind this comes from the hidden church of the Illuminati, because the Brotherhood and Order of the Pleroma, the sanctuary of the Gnosis, which was Bishop Louis Kaiser, and then you have a lot of other people involved in these charters, that come from what was known as the Brotherhood of the Illuminati. Because I don't know if you know this part of the history of the Gnostic tradition, or you are at liberty to discuss it. But there is the whole thing connected to Richard Jean Chrétien de Palatine, the Serene Highness, and whereas we have to understand that this ancient mystic order of Fratres Lucis is, of course, very different from the most evil side of the Illuminati, which is much satanic, of course. But these, in a way, these groups get, in the end, infiltrated, some of them, and of course, they have a very strong connection with Freemasonry and with Martinism, especially the Gnostic realities of today. And so it's very interesting to study them for me as this sovereign imperium of mysteries that they even registered once in Bangalore with their whole school of Gnostic aids. And there is a whole bunch of lineages, different lineages that go around. And the important thing for us is to have a relationship with a Christianity that we regard as traditional, and that's why I'm personally connected to the Orthodox Church. And it's a way, this is the way we in an order. Our spiritual father is a Gnostic, bishop. Is an Orthodox bishop who is who comes from a Russian Ukraine, and of course we work blessings of the Russian Orthodox Church, with the blessings also of the Patriarch in Constantinople, Bartolomeo I. I mean, some of us are Orthodox Knights Templar, some of us are Orthodox Knights of Malta, but our lineages and our traditions have actual churches, have actual structure, when instead it seems that the sanctuary of the Gnosis and the hidden church of Illuminati and of Melchizedek doesn't really have a structure. These successions, when they fall into the hand of the wrong people, they become a joke, in a sense. So these wandering bishops sometimes become really not so serious, and some of them become even dangerous, especially when they are polluted by Crowleyanity and things like this.
Leo, what do you think of Martinism and its contribution to Freemasonry, of Kabbalah, of Hermeticism? Do you see them as parallel streams? Do you think they're the same stream in different ways? You're an expert in these matters. How do you see the interweave of these things in practical lodge terms? Are people at liberty to practice all of them? But give us an expert view.
Okay. Well, in my order illuminatorum universalis, we have managed to do what 100 years ago some great initiates had actually put together. And then some of them got taken over by merging everything in one big order, like Spencer Lewis with Amorc, then creating after his own Martinist order. What we do instead in our order is different. We take these pre-existing lineages, a specific pre-existing Martinist lineage that we have within our order, and of course we have the charter for initiating regularly within that current, which is a regular current of the Martinist tradition. And then we have also other groups but that do different things, and they are like, each of them are taking like parallel to the Masonic structure also within the order. And so we're trying to construct a parallel structure, but if some people, for example, want to not partake of a specific order which is in our structure, they can make that decision And that's okay with us, of course. It depends from the level of commitment you want to have. It's like Freemasonry. You can decide to take certain degrees and certain others. You can just go till the third degree and never enter a rite. You understand? So it's your choice. That's how I have in the years structured my own order, and so the mystery schools that operate within. The important thing within these mystery schools is, first of all, that the traditions are respected. So Martinism can't charge any money. It's obligatory in Martinism that nobody accepts any money for the practices of Martinism. If any money is exchanged between people who do this kind of initiations in Martinism, it has to be disregarded immediately as a powerless, materialistic, that has nothing to do with the contemplation of the great mysteries of nature or the universal movement towards something higher. I am perfectly at ease to tell you that my attempt is similar to what was happening in certain groups that in parallel had constructed, they had their own, they had the Illuminati, of course, they had the more Illuministic order, they had the Martinists, they had the Rosicrucian branch, but everything in parallel. And of course, it works very well because this was the original concept that I created in Montecarlo in 1999 as an umbrella to various orders I wanted to preserve in their purity. Because once, of course, in these lineages, you have the possibility of being an initiator, and you have the consecration, the possibility of being independent from the who gave you all this, because your level has reached that possibility of asking for the whole ritual structure and also putting it into practice with a certain degree of independence. That's what we have done with the Ordo Illuminatorum Universalis. We have now the possibility of reawakening for the first time in 220 years almost the right of strict observance of Freemasonry. It has not been done because nowadays you have, for example, the rectified Scottish Rite, which of course was very important also for the elements that then sprang into Martinism, but with but the original thing comes from the strict observance of von Hund, which was decided to eliminate it at the Masonic convent of Wilhelmsbad, in the last one, I think 1782. And at that point, you are missing basically a Masonic rite, which was very important at the beginning of this whole speculative Freemasonry history. Why is it missing, this rite? Why do you think it's missing? Why do you think it was eliminated in 1782 and transformed itself partly, of course, in the rectified Scottish Rite, which is not exactly the same, and also in the Swedish Rite, and some elements were picked up also by other rites. But the thing is that you have to understand the strict observance really is the basis for the reconstitution of the empire, the real empire, the empire made of aristocrats and not made of people pretending to be aristocrats like it happens instead in the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite, which of course is claiming to have a lineage with the Sacred Roman Empire through Frederick the Great in Prussia, but in reality then at times is very much historically doubted that they ever had this link. When instead the strict observance has this link, and so I am reopening as a Masonic rite instead of using the ancient accepted Scottish Rite, which of course I am a 33 degrees, so I'm very used to it, I like it. And I like many other rites, like the Memphis and Mizraim and Memphis, the Egyptian rite of Cairo. I like other Masonic, the emulation. I did emulation in England for many years. But I think that for us it's important to do something different, to do something that is groundbreaking, even Masonically speaking, to reawake a rite that I actually have to go and gather the aprons and the jewels in various museums around Europe because nobody knows anymore how they're made. Well, for me, that is a challenge. And of course, it's a challenge for all the other Masons that are in my group, because my group, of course, of Illuminati is made of people who have all kinds of degrees. Many of them are Grand Masters, also Variant Templar Order. They belong to SMTJ, or SMTA, and all the various Neo-Templar, various Maltese orders, Knights of the Holy Seven. I have various knighthoods that simply manage to coexist in my Senate structure within my order. I have a Senate structure for that. It's called the Senate, the Knights Templar Senate, for these kind of things. And also we have beautiful traditions that were getting lost or in the hands of this Satanism, and we have just simply picked up and preserved. So I am doing at the same time a work outwards where I'm condemning all the corruption of certain traditions, because of course it has to be denounced, they have to be eliminated. All these mercenaries need to go away of they need to disintegrate their lodges because they are simply a bunch of charlatans, and we need to preserve what is good. If this good can also be transferred later on in the social world, in the society, if this can help our society getting better by giving those intellectual inputs, by giving also those real inputs in the military world, in the political world, and all that. It would be nice. If I make better people, better soldiers, better politicians, that would be a great thing. You see, we need to make these suits brainless, robotic, that go at the Bilderberg Club, that stand in line to enter these transnational lodges, which are completely evil, liberal, and atheistic, to just stop and say, listen, guys, this is not the right way. This is not the right path. And if you continue on this path, you're never going to get anywhere, and you're going to destroy society as well as being a counter-initiate. You're not a real initiate. The tableau of the various rights that we have we have the right, basic rituals of every single that was ever created in Freemasonry. We have contacts with all the archivists. We were invited last year as a study group to participate to an important event at the Bibliothèque Nationale in Paris in May, where also Joseph Wages was, because we regard ourselves, first of all, as a study group. But then when it comes down to the rites which are practiced, I mean, we have the Louis de Cohen, we have people who have done the rectified Scottish rite, we have the Martinists, we have the Illuminati of Avignon, the Theosophists, the Philaletes, the primitive rite. We have basically a study of the Western initiatic system in the whole, because we want to forge a new generation of Illuminati, purify them for all that rubbish, garbage of black magic, golden dawn, troll, everything that came out of Victorian England needs to be burnt on the stake. It's completely wrong.
Oh, Leo, I could talk to you for hours and hours.
So I think that I gave you a general idea of what I'm doing, and I hope that to speak to you soon in another radio show, and at the same time to come to London to do this workshop for your eventual interested parties, that I hope will include also many British Masons that will have the courage to open their eyes a little bit more, because, you know, I was for many years part of the Canterbury Masonic Research Center when it still existed, and I was very saddened by the fact that 3 or 4 years ago it was closed down, because simply the incompetence of the British Masons made it impossible to maintain a serious structure of research and study that was not connected to any interest, of course, that are not for me relating to the craft or relating to the initiatic world, but of course interest of money, interest of manipulation, of other games that I'm not interested to play in these environments. Of course, if you tell me to. Sorry?
You are incredible, my friend. We've got a lot to talk about over the coming weeks. I think we're beginning to run out of time. Forgive me for interjecting, Leo. Paul, my dear, any last questions from you?
No, I was just fascinated listening to all that. It's such an interesting subject, and definitely, Leo, I mean, there's so much more we could talk about. So it'd be brilliant if you could come back on again in the next few weeks or months, or when you're available. Because it's such a. Please
remind your audience that they can know more about what I'm talking about by reading my books. Confessions of an Illuminati, Volume 1 is out in the English language, and Pope Francis the Last Pope ? And soon, in June, another groundbreaking work, which is Confessions Volume 2. And I can assure you that my books are even more in detail than what I'm talking to you now, because they are work of academic research that are very difficult then to criticize, because I go on every single aspect of it. I bring credible sources, evidence that this conspiracy indeed exists. At times, we need to really face the reality of it. It exists because we are co-participant of it. And if we don't change, we will never change the world, and the structure around us will never change. So we need to really do something to change everything around us and take a stand by reading these books and then spreading the word that the reality around us is very different from what they think, and that we can't keep on living in a prison world led by these ignorant fools incapable of going on, including the royal family in England, which, even if they are my relatives, they're a bunch of incompetent fools. Thank you.
And that sounds like one's a carry on for the next time. And yeah, I'll certainly be linking any links you'd like our listeners to know about.
Will
be on the page.
The Queen another day.
Yeah, no, we're already getting a flavour for the next one. Thank you very much, Leo. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and like we say, we'll be looking forward to getting you back on.
Thank you very much, guys.
And that was Lyon Zagami. I do apologise for some of the signal we were getting there wasn't perfect. The connection we were getting there with Leo, but does tend to happen sometimes with Skype. We could understand what you were saying, so we persevered, but I apologise for that quality. But what a really interesting interview. You know, what an interesting guy. Knows his stuff, doesn't he, David?
Well, he's a good turn, isn't he? I mean, oh God, yes, I know I'm saying it again, everybody. I could talk to him for hours, but come on, you must all know what I'm getting at in this particular case. I mean, he's a mine of information. He knows his material. Agree with him or not, and I dare say there are lots of disagreements possible. He's so fascinating to talk to.
Yeah, I found it interesting because I've always felt you think of the Illuminati as the instigators of a lot of the problems he was talking about, but it only goes to show not all these groups have the same agenda. You know what I mean? It's kind of he was pretty much sympathising with a lot of the issues we bring up on the show sometimes, and so I thought that was interesting because, you know, to think, I've always thought it's strange to think that one group will have the same philosophy and harmonise together for hundreds and hundreds of years. It just doesn't make sense. You're going to have different opinions even within those groups, you know, or similar groups.
As I say, Paul, excuse me, you've got to remember that the concept of Illuminism, you're enlightened, you've been given light, is actually a positive thing. It's a good thing, and it goes back in white magic to the very beginning. You know, I mean, what they're talking about, I think, and what Leo's talking about, I think, is the corruption of that. You know, the invasion of that way of thinking, that practice, that experience, by things that can only dim the light or give you a false light. And that, of course, is when we get into very complex territory indeed. You know, what is it the good book says? The devil himself can appear as an angel of light. But that is not a simple statement. That's actually a very complex statement. So we've got to be careful of it. You know, and I was so pleased he knew that the original Christians would have said they were enlightened. They would have said they're Illuminists. You know, and they were making a powerful contribution to the progress of the world. Anyway, that's my take on it, and we've got to get him back. My heavens.
Definitely, he'll be back as one of our many fascinating guests in the coming months. So yeah, we'll be looking forward to that one. And that is all we've got time for this week. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Keep downloading the show as well as keep telling your friends about the show. And we'll be looking forward to speaking to you all again soon. Till the next time, take care. Bye.
Chelsea.